Hi everyone, thanks for being with me today on my show. I'm glad that you could be here to hear whatever I might have to say that is relevant to you. Who knows whether that's the case or not, but welcome all the same. Just before I carry on, I'd just like to say to people, look, if you like what I have to say, I really like you to subscribe and ring the bell so that you can be notified of any further notifications. And also, it is a help to me to get my numbers up as well, which would be really pleasing. Now, the reason why this particular discussion, anyway, is about Alan Joyce, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Qantas. And what I wanted to say about him today is that we need to find a way to perhaps have that man sacked, primarily because he offers nothing to this particular organisation. And you know, Qantas used to be recognised as one of the most significant airline, how can I put it? I guess one of the best renowned airlines in the world. And we had developed that reputation by ensuring that our maintenance was of a highest possible standard. I don't know if there's ever been an airline crash that has involved Qantas, and certainly our service delivery has been outstanding over the years. However, that now seems to have changed because of Alan Joyce. Now, Alan Joyce receives an incredible salary, something around $36 million a year, and I think that's including bonuses and so forth, but it's an extraordinary salary. And one would expect with that sort of salary, we have an organisation that is outstanding. However, that is not the case under Joyce. The company has actually, since the pandemic in particular, has not been very successful. And I can understand that as a result of the issues that were created by the pandemic, that certainly there were strains on the industry and there were strains on Qantas as a result. And that it meant that for some period of time, staff had to be let go. I understand all of that. But one would expect that whatever the standard was that we had prior to the pandemic, that standard to some degree would be maintained. However, it hasn't been. And as a result of all of that, we've wound up with an organisation that is looking like one of the worst, gone from one of the best, and is now one of the worst. Now, there's an article in the Saturday paper today that I think is worth noting, and I just want to go through that so that we can talk a little bit about what this all means. Now, the title of the article is Inside the Qantas Saga. It's a wonder they can get a plane off the ground. And I agree. And the man responsible for all of this is the $36 million kid, Joyce. And I think we need to revise, or Qantas needs to revise his significance. And firstly, it's an extraordinary amount of money to be paid. I know that there are organisations that pay their chief executives far more than what Joyce is receiving. But at the end of the day, if what you're producing is of a poor quality and is diminishing the brand, then surely questions need to be asked. Now, this particular article is significant because it does point out the issues in relation to Qantas in particular and the role that Joyce has had to play in all of that. And it says here, the Easter holiday season approached, airlines across Australia prepared for frontline aviation workers to face hordes of disgruntled travellers. Qantas was holding a wellness week for its head office employees. So clearly, as the industry was suffering and as they were laying off their staff, the organisation thought that it was perhaps a really good idea to look at the wellness of their executives and the other people, those people who weren't affected, in fact, by what was happening for everybody else within Qantas. And I think that it is somewhat disgusting to think that they thought that they were the ones that needed the wellness week, whereas those that they'd laid off, clearly they were suffering and they wanted, perhaps needed more of that wellness week. Despite the looming crisis about which Australia's national carrier has been warned repeatedly, management of the airline had arranged a week of yoga, mediation, Zumba dance classes, and a therapeutic puppy that staff at the Qantas campus at Mascot could pat to take the stress away. How lovely was that for them? It was a typical corporate program to treat staff. Now, the staff they're talking about are kind of the executive staff, certainly not those laid off, and led to the business travel period in 2 weeks, when Qantas had done so much to jettison workers. In the case of luggage handlers, an entire business within the company was completely disrupted, and they were busily having this fun time. After divesting an entirety of its below-the-wing ground handling business with some 20,000 workers at 10 airports and using the paying to offshore hundreds more call centre staff, and to stand down 20,000 workers while complaining $855 million in JobKeeper. So while they were laying off staff, they were claiming that they needed some assistance from the government. And it is shocking to think that the amount of money that they earned was $855 million. When you consider that $36 million, kind of that money, was paid to Joyce himself, is a scandal in itself. I went through the airport. This is what Joyce said. So this is Joyce not taking responsibility for what had happened, but simply blaming his staff for what happened during the pandemic. I went through the airports on Wednesday, and people forget they need to take out their laptops. So he's blaming the frigging customers for what had happened, and I find this appalling. They have to take out their aerosols, so that is taking longer to get through the security queue. He said at times our customers are not match fit. They're not match fit. Well, they didn't go off and have that wonderful weekend where they were patting puppies and doing yoga and dancing and doing all the other things that the others were doing. So let's not. So Joyce is saying here, I'm not going to take responsibility for any of this. I'm going to blame travellers for the fact that they were taking longer to take their laptops and their aerosol cans out of their baggage. You know, like, everybody knows when you go to the airport that it is important to be able to take your laptop and all the other stuff out. Everybody knows that is what you simply do. Everybody does it. Now, to blame them all of a sudden for what is happening and not taking responsibility yourself says a lot about this particular dude. So later, Joyce, who had earned almost $100 million as the man in charge of Qantas since 2008, would suggest that workplace absentee rates of up to 18% might also, funnily enough, has something to do with historic logjams at airports, cancelled or delayed flights, and an overwhelmed baggage handling system. So the man's a dick, let's face it. Yet this would explain only part of the considerable problem facing the airlines. Joyce was not willing to get into the rest of it. So in other words, he was not prepared to take a responsibility, and that it's a complete mess. And my honest belief is that they just do not care about providing good quality service anymore. So who was told this? So this is another source, not named. They are impervious to public scrutiny and criticism. A new crisis is just another day's work to them. So they have no consideration, in fact, for what's happening for the everyday person at all. So it is important for us to acknowledge, I think, that if someone is doing something that's creating havoc within their own industry, where they are failing to take responsibility for what is happening within their industry, and particularly with regard to their own organisation, then that person has to be held accountable. In this instance, I think it's important that we hold this man to account. So what do you think? Now, if you do have an idea around any of this, please subscribe. Please leave a comment down below so I can discuss that with you. Let me know what you think. and hopefully you might come up with some ideas that might be really helpful. So thanks everybody. Take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.